Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending wherever you are. My name is Omar Harami, and I will be giving you a news update on what's happening in the country currently. I would like just to ask from Mark or Ryan, could you please send Dr. Meir is having problems logging into the section, into the program again. So if you'd help him, I'd appreciate it. And I hope Denise is also has managed to get, the storyteller has managed to log into the meeting. To begin with, we will start with the news update with a meeting. So just give me a minute. So plenty of things have been happening on a daily basis. The world is becoming, so many developments are happening almost every second, every hour. The major point, just an update, Israel today recorded over 10,000 cases of COVID-19, which is the highest since the pandemic has started in Israel. In Palestine, we have these numbers of over 10,000 include occupied East Jerusalem. In the West Bank and Gaza, the number of testing is much lower than Israel. We have around 1,000 average or less of cases a day. The number of deaths are around 15 to 20 on the Palestinian side, and unfortunately also in Israel, it's much higher. Vaccination continues in Israel. There's over 2.2 million people who have received at least one dose of mainly Pfizer vaccine. We are hoping to receive the first 5,000 vaccines this evening. Russia has donated or committed to sending a number of vaccines. Yesterday was the last Christmas, or the first Christmas in 2021, depends on how you look at it, depending on the Armenian calendar. So again, very limited celebrations in Bethlehem on the final Christmas this year. In Gaza, continues, tension, rockets fired, Israel retaliates, or Israel attacks certain areas in Gaza, and Palestinian factions retaliate with rockets. Today, there was plenty of attacks using this on the fishermen in Gaza, creating lots of panic. Plenty of people got injured. Again, today, the attacks against Palestinian farmers and especially olive trees continues. Only today, there was over 100 trees that were completely uprooted in Masafer Yatta, southern Hebron area. People, if you are in Palestine or you're following Palestinian news, everybody's talking about the elections. There's plenty of elections happening this year around mid-May for electing a president, a Palestinian Legislative Council, and for the municipality local elections. It's a bit weird because they're changing some of the rules of the election process. And there's plenty of news reports that saying that both Fatah and Hamas will be on one list. So imagine like in the US, if it's the Democrats and the Republicans have one group, they're running together for the same election. So they already divide the seats of the Congress or the Senate. And so it doesn't really sound very democratic. And many people are very upset. But at least we have an election process, and at least people have the ability to make a change. Since today we're speaking about building permits, 8 houses in Duma village. Duma village was 5 years ago very much in the news because of the settlers' attack on the village, which ended up with the killing of the Wabshe family. 3 people got burned alive and one kid survived, but has really sustained plenty serious wounds. The same village received today 8 demolition orders because of building permits. The Israeli army says that 8 houses or more than 8 houses, many of the houses are built without a permit. For the people who know Jerusalem, and there's a very important character, and this character, his name is Ghassan Yunus. He is, we call him the father of cats and birds in Al-Aqsa Mosque. He's been for 30 years traveling from the north of the country inside Israel, coming on almost on a daily basis, not missing, maybe missed 4 or 5 days in the past 30 years. Comes to Al-Aqsa, and his job is to feed the kittens and the birds in Al-Aqsa. So that's why everybody loves him. He also has, he spreads, distributes candy and so on. He passed away today. So if you are in Palestine, the social media, everybody is paying respect to this person. Actually, there was plenty of material that has been done on covered his news. So this is a very short 1-minute film on who this person is who passed away.
إن جميع الطيور والقطط تجتمع فقط حين بس يعلم أني قد دخلت إلى المسجد الأقصى المبارك. ذلك الفضل من الله، وأفعل ذلك الشيء أكثر من 20 عاما. كان بالأول يعني كنت أحضر السكاكر والطعام والحلوى للكبار السن، يعني وأنا يعني تعودت بعون الله من هذا الباب. كنت يعني كل من يلاقيني كان كبير السن أو ولد أو أي حتى إنسان يأتي من أكثر كنت أعطيه شيئا يعني من الحلوى. ثم يعني انتقلنا كما أنت يعني كما شاهدت الآن يعني القطط والعصافير والحمام وكل هذه الأشياء.
So please hold him in your prayers. He will be very much missed.
Have you seen her? Have you seen her?
So I hope you heard the news update. I wasn't checking the messages. So we will be moving now to Denise. Is Denise with us? Yes, she is. But each week we hope to be sharing one story with a Palestinian character. Sometimes it will be with the same theme of the week, and sometimes we'll have a different, we'll have a theme that is not related. So Denise, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
Hi.
So Denise will be speaking about, speaking about a story. The story will be about Ikrit. It is one, Ikrit and Kufr Bir'am are two famous Christian, totally Christian villages that were destroyed in 1948. Bishop Ilyas Shakur, our founders, come from Kufr Bir'am, which is the sister village of Ikrit. So Denise, please.
Hello everybody, صباح الخير, مساء الخير. I am so happy to be with you. And about Ikret, Omar, it was in the last of the war in 48, at the end of the year, the army came to the village Ikret, and the people were really يعني with the هذه الرايات البيضاء with the white shells, and they didn't do anything, but the army decided that all of them have to move to another village, and they kept only 10 people to take care of the houses. And in April 48, they also forced the few people who remained in Ikret to go. They forced them to leave the village, and they declare about it like a army area that nobody can move to it. And what it's very interesting in this village and the other village Kufr, they destroyed in the Christmas Eve 1951, like 3 years after the Nakba, after the war of 48. So once upon a time, it's almost 200 years ago, in this Ikrit, the village in the northern border of Palestine with Lebanon, there was, in the edge of the village, there was a small house, white small house, with 3 olive trees behind it. And in this house lived a very poor farmer with her husband that he never worked. He was unemployed by choice. He was like dreamer. So she have to go every day, early in the morning, taking care of the field, collecting the vegetables and the fruits, go to Safat city, which is the closest city to this village, to the market there, selling her product. With the money she get, she bought food for her husband and for herself. Went back home, she cooks, wakes up her husband, serve him the food. He went back to dream. She cleaned the house, washed the clothes, take care of all the animals around that she had in the farm, and went to sleep very early because there was no radio, no TV, no WhatsApp, no Facebook, nothing to do. And life go like this, and she was really okay with her. But something happened in the middle of the night, of one of the nights. She woke up very excited. She had a very, very strange dream. She wakes up her husband and told him, I had a very strange dream. So what? I am dreaming all the time, but you have to listen. I dream that I am in Jerusalem, in the wall near Damascus Gate, and I found a treasure. When I reached out to take it, I woke up. Oh, silly dream. Go back to sleep. You make me really very upset. She get upset for him, but she went back to sleep. And early in the morning, as usual, she went to farming her field, collecting the vegetables and the fruits, going to the market, selling them, buying food, comes back, cooks, wakes him up, all the ordinary things that she used to do. And while she was doing all the things, she thought like 5-6 times about this dream, because she never left her village, not to Jerusalem. And she heard maybe once or twice about Jerusalem, or she know nothing about Damascus Gate and the treasure. It was really strange. Night after, in the middle of the night, she dreamed the same dream, and she woke up her husband. Now he was really very angry, and he shouted at her, it's again about Jerusalem, Damascus Gate, treasure. What happened to you, my wife? Go back to sleep. She couldn't go back to sleep, so she went to her field, took care of it, took the products, went to the market, sell, buy the food as usual. But this time she couldn't stop thinking about this strange dream. And In the third night, she also had this dream again. This time she didn't woke her husband up. She took some tomato, some bread, some cheese, white cheese, put it in a towel, and left the house to Jerusalem. She was very poor. Even a donkey she don't have. Don't talk about car or train and I think so she had to walk. She walked and walked to Safed city, through Akka, Haifa, Caesarea, my parents' village, the ruined one, Jaffa, to Jerusalem. It took her 7 days and nights. When she arrived Jerusalem, she asked a woman there, please tell me, where is Damascus Gate? So she explained to her. She went there, rest on the wall. It was the end of the day. There were a few travelers leaving the old city, and almost all the sellers left. Only one of them was there. The sesame bread seller was there, calling for his cake. Cake سخون, cake, falafel bread, cake. It looked very tasty, but she had no money and she had her food. So before dark, she left because she didn't know anything to lead her to her dream. But she said, okay, tomorrow I will come early in the morning. She found a place to sleep. Next day, early in the morning, she came to Damascus Gate. She sat in the wall, looking around. She saw the farmers like her, the woman with the dress, the traditional dress, selling grapes from Khalil from Hebron, Lebanese, which is Palestinian cheese. And she saw the sweet seller, الهريسي, بياع الهريسي, who was calling harisi, it's Palestinian sweet. And she saw also the juice, the very special juice seller, العرق سوس اللي عباله ما يحرم حاله. And also she saw the sesame bread seller who was calling for his bread. كعك سخون, كعك بيت, فلافل كعك. She said a lot of people, always Jerusalem were the place that everybody from all the religions came to visit the church, the mosque there. But nothing from this lead her to her dream. Nothing, no treasure. But she thought, I have my dream for 3 nights. So I will stay till tomorrow. It will be the 3rd day for me in Jerusalem. Okay, she went for a place to sleep. Early in the 3rd morning, she came. She took her place in the wall of Damascus Gate. And she watched the same farmers who were selling the Lebanese, والجبني, the cheese, the Palestinian cheese, and the white Palestinian cheese, and the juice seller, اللي عباله ولا يحرم حاله, عرق سوس, and the Palestinian sweets, الهريسي seller, who was calling الهريسي, أحلى من العروسة الهريسي. And also she saw and heard the sesame bread seller who was calling for the ka'ik, called ka'ik, the sesame bread. كعك, بيت, كعك سخن, بيت, كعك. She watched the people coming to Jerusalem, to the old city, leaving the old city. She watching it the whole day. In the end of the day, before the sun set, she was sure that she had nothing to do there. Nothing will lead her to her dream or to make it true, to find the treasure. So she collected her few stuff. Then the sesame seller, sesame bread seller came to her very politely. He said, "Good evening, lady. You are like my sister. Can I ask you a question, please?" "You can. Why not?" "I saw you for 3 days sitting here on the wall, watching the people. You didn't sell anything. You didn't buy anything. What is your story?" "Oh, I had a dream for 3 nights that I am in Jerusalem, in Damascus Gate, and I found a treasure. And I was really I want really this treasure. So I follow my dream." Oh, woman, and the silly thing, you know, I am dreaming for 10 days about Ikrit in the northern of Palestine. There is a white house in the edge of the village. And behind this house, there is 3 olive trees. And beneath the middle tree, there is a treasure. 3 boxes of gold, silver, diamonds. You think I am stupid to follow my dream to go up to the northern border of Palestine from Jerusalem? She didn't answer him. She hurried up, running all the way back to Ikrit. What took her 7 days and nights took her 3 days and nights. When she reached her house, she called for her husband. "Oh, my husband! God bless us with a treasure." "Oh, no! I thought you will not come back. That wolves will eat you while you are walking there to Jerusalem." She didn't mind. She went back and she was digging beneath the middle olive tree. She digged and digged and digged, and she found box full of silver. She continued to dig, and she found a box with gold. She continued to dig, and she found a box of rare diamonds. First thing, she built a school for the children of her village, because she couldn't learn, and she wanted a good future for the children of her village. And she built a very nice house, almost a palace. And you know who was left out of this palace? Yes, her husband, العاطل لا شغلي ولا عملي, unemployed one, dreamer. And she built a church. And if you will have a chance after this horrible corona, and you will come to visit Palestine, it's Palestine, and you will go to the northern of Palestine in the border with Lebanon, to Ikrit village, you will find this church still there. I told you my story and put it in your heart. I hope you will like it as I like it. وحكايتي حكيتها وبقلبكم خبيتها ويا ريت تحبوها زي ما أنا حبيتها. شكرا لعمر, and thank you for everybody. Good night.
Thank you very much, Denise. We will now move to our wonderful friend and Jeff Halper on the topic of building permits.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on this Sibyl, not a program, it's not a program, Sibyl webinar. Meir is on, right? Is Meir there? Meir Margalit?
Yes, he is. He is.
All right, so what I suggest, what I'd like to do is present the big picture of house demolitions, permits, and so on. And Meir is much more involved with the nitty-gritty, the actual working with the people, the permits, with the municipality, of Jerusalem, the different authorities. And so maybe I'll leave that part to Meir, and I'll give a certain contextual overview, and then we can kind of discuss the whole thing together. Because what I want to say is that, obviously the policy of house demolitions falls within a much larger political framework. Roughly, Israel has demolished about 60,000 Palestinian homes and structures in the occupied territory, which includes East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza, since 1967. Now, it's very hard to determine how many of those are homes, although it doesn't really matter in some ways, because many of the structures, as they're called, are also important for the livelihood of the people. They're barns, they're fences sometimes, they're corrals for sheep or goats. There's water reservoirs. In other words, even if it's not a home that's demolished, because Israel uses the term structure for everything it demolishes. It doesn't differentiate between different kinds of structures, including homes. Nonetheless, it's a tremendous blow to Palestinian livelihood and life. Not only if you get your house demolished, but also if you get your livelihood structures demolished. Now, of the 60,000 or so structures that have been demolished in the occupied territory, we don't know exactly how many are homes. But if you think that, think of it this way, that on the one hand, you have many structures that aren't homes, like fences or livestock corrals or whatever. On the other hand, you have buildings, there's buildings in Gaza certainly, but also in Jenin and other places, in Palestinian cities. You can have 7 or 8 story, or East Jerusalem, 7 or 8 story apartment buildings that hold maybe 25 or 30 housing units, floor by floor by floor. But when that's demolished, it only counts as one. You see? So in other words, we talk about 60,000 homes or structures being demolished, in which we try to it's a ballpark figure. But the point is that, we figure, okay, some of the structures aren't homes. On the other hand, many of the homes, you can have in one apartment building 25 homes, even though it counts as one. So it's really a very purposely unclear designation structures that Israel uses in order to kind of hide, I think, the import of its demolition policy. But the 60,000 are only a piece of the story, of course. During the Nakba, in 1948, but after 1948, into the 1960s, Israel systematically demolished more than 530 entire Palestinian communities. Whole villages, towns, urban neighborhoods. And if you add up those accounted for something like 55, 60,000 more homes and other structures that were demolished. And then, of course, Israel continues to demolish homes inside Israel itself until today. In other words, the house demolition issue isn't only an occupation issue. It goes on inside Israel. In fact, there are some years in which there are 2 or 3 times more demolitions of homes inside Israel, of Israeli citizens, all of whom, of course, are Palestinians, than there are in the occupied territory. So from the house demolition point of view, there's very little difference between what happens inside Israel or what happens in the occupied territory. And if you take the whole thing together then, Nakba, inside Israel, the occupied territories, we're talking about something like 150, 160,000 homes and other structures. So it's a tremendous, you can imagine the impact of losing that amount of housing and livelihood structures in the Palestinian community. It's a tremendous impact on the community. Now, so the big question is why? And of course, and this is where I have a new book coming out this week actually, that's called Decolonizing Israel, Liberating Palestine. And in a sense, there's a new approach that hasn't percolated out yet to the general public, to the so-called conflict here, that I think is very useful, that we have to put this all inside of. In other words, we're used to talking about a conflict, the Arab-Israeli conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but it's not a conflict. You know, a conflict is two sides, or more sides, two sides that have some kind of dispute and they fight, and the way you resolve it is you get together and negotiate and find a compromise and get onto some kind of a compromise. But Zionism was never a conflict. We're not talking about homes demolished as a result of war. The homes demolished, for example, 98% of the homes that have been demolished all through the hit from 48 until today have nothing whatsoever to do with security. So there's no connection between a conflict and home demolitions. It isn't that these are homes of terrorists, because that's what, of course, Israel wants you to believe. But we know that in 90-some% of the cases, these demolitions had nothing to do with terrorism. In fact, in the massive destruction in 48, the residents had left completely, weren't even in the villages. There was no more fighting. They had left, or they'd been driven out. And then, like I said, into the 1960s, Israel was demolishing the villages and towns. In the West Bank as well. In 95% of the cases, it has nothing to do with security. People aren't charged with anything. They're not terrorists. They're not politically involved. So in other words, it isn't a matter of a conflict. That somehow it's a conflict, and of course in a conflict, you know, there's damage. No, Zionism, and this is really important for us, for all our analyses, to begin to understand. Zionism was a settler colonial project. The idea of Zionism, it wasn't that Jews came here. It wasn't a matter of Jews coming back to their homeland. That wasn't the problem. The Jews were coming back for centuries to what they considered their homeland. That was fine. But settlers are not immigrants. Settlers come to a country with the intent of taking it over. In other words, Zionism as a settler colonial movement, like South Africa, like the US, like Canada, like Australia, New Zealand, there's many other countries. The Zionists came here with the idea of transforming an Arab country into a Jewish country, transforming Palestine into the land of Israel. So it was unilateral. It was our agenda. We came to take over the country. We were entitled. We didn't ask the Palestinians. The Palestinians weren't a side. We're not going to negotiate. We've never negotiated with the Palestinians. And Israel has never, ever, ever accepted even the existence, not to mention the national rights of Palestinians. So now you begin to understand why house demolitions become so important, because the key, the basis of a colonial movement, a settler colonial movement, is to take the land. And without the land, you can't take over the country. You know, it's not classical colonialism, where like in the British in India, where they had a small British population that exploited India and the Indians and so on. No, the idea is to make the country your own country. And therefore you have to have the land. So taking the land, displacing the indigenous population is key to all of this. And that's the framework in which we have to understand the house demolition process. It was a matter of displacing the Palestinians, taking their land, and eventually, of course, turning the country into a Zionist country. And that's a process, we have a term for it, it's called Judaization. We're Judaizing the country. And so the house demolition issue is key to that. And that's why it's still taking place inside Israel as well as in the occupied territory. And it's never going to end until we have the entire country. The Palestinians might get pushed into little enclaves, areas A, B, you know, inside Israel itself into little pockets of places. But basically, we want the land, and therefore we're demolishing the homes in order to push them either out of the country or push them into the enclaves and take their land. So that as we're discussing these particular things like the permit system and everything else, we have to understand the details. We have to understand within this wider context. And the last thing I'll say is that, you know, there's no way, I mean, you know, see, Israel is still, you know, Israel tries, all settler colonial enterprises try to hide their intentions, and they try to hide the violence, and they try to make themselves normal, and in fact blame the indigenous population for the conflict, so-called. And that's the trick of all settler colonial enterprises. So for Israel, it's very important, and this is where Meir can get into the legal part of it. It's very important to follow the law, you see, because, you know, the whole idea that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, it isn't just a saying that's good for PR. It's an attempt to try to take a settler colonial movement and present it as something that's legal, normal, you know, like any other democratic country, that we follow the laws. Now, the laws, of course, have to be laws that allow the settlers to take over the land. They can't be genuine laws that really protect the rights of the indigenous people that own the land. They're colonial laws, but they're laws, but nevertheless, they're laws, and you have the Supreme Court and the courts and everything else, which is the reason why, you know, everything Israel does in terms of demolitions violates international law. It violates the Fourth Geneva Convention. But under the Israeli system, you say international law is not relevant because international law has to do with occupation, and there is no occupation because the land of Israel belongs to us. And therefore, Israeli law becomes the law. The Israeli colonial law becomes the law rather than any kind of a legal system like international law, the Fourth Geneva Convention, that actually protects Palestinians. So in order to understand the nitty gritty and the details of demolitions that Meir is going to go into now, you have to have that bigger perspective, I think. And that's what my new book is trying to present. So I'll leave it at that. I think I talked over time, probably. I hope you heard me. Okay. Omar?
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
Dr. Meir, are you with us?
Oh, yes, I am here. Thank you. And to be honest, after the brilliant presentation of Jeff Halper, I have not a lot to add. But before I will start, I have to apologize. My English is very poor, and I will try to do the best. But so please forgive me for my bad English. Something relating the issue of the numbers of house demolitions. Are you hear me? Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we hear you. We hear you.
Yes, something concerning the number of house demolitions. What Jeff said is true, of course, but he forget another issue, that another way to demolish houses, that is what we call the self-demolitions. Self-demolition is there are numbers that we never know. We can not knowing. It's when the municipality comes to a family and they push them to demolish their house by themselves. This is something terrible, saying that if they will not do it, they will get fines and they will suffer for an amount of fines that all their life they will not be able to pay them. So there are many families that they demolish the houses by themselves, and these numbers, you will never find them in the municipal reports. So this is something really Machiavellic, terrible. I would like also to add something in order to get the big picture. What is behind these demolitions? What kind of ideology? I was many years in the municipality, and I know them from within. I know the people that work there. And I can say that many of them are, yes, good guys. Part of them also, they vote for left parties. So, yes, they are good guys that they work for the right wing. And what is the issue behind? The issue is that what we used to call the demographic phantom, the demographic phantom. The numbers shows that according to different demographic approaches, that a Palestinian will become a majority in the next 10 years, or maximum in the next 20 years. Palestinians will become majority in Jerusalem, and then when they will become a majority, they have a chance that the mayor, the next mayor in Jerusalem, will be a Palestinian one. Maybe you know that Palestinians, they are not citizens, they cannot vote for the parliament, but because they are residents, they can vote for the municipality. And it's true that till now they boycott the elections, but we know that they know that we know that once they will be a majority, it's a good chance that the mayor will be a Palestinian one. And if it's something that make the Israeli authorities crazy, that really it make them crazy, is the idea that the mayor of the capital of Israel, of the most emblematic city for the Jewish people all over the world, will be a Palestinian. And this is something that can happen not in the future, but in the next 10 years. It can happen. Palestinians, together with the left, the small left in Jerusalem, will make this possible. And this is the reason that is behind the policies of demolitions. How the idea is to make the Palestinian life so hard that they will prefer to leave the city to the Palestinian Authority, where it's easier to get a license. So the idea is, make the life hard. We will refuse to give them licenses, so they will, and with the hope that if no houses, as Palestinians will leave the city to the Palestinian Authority. If, of course, it doesn't make sense, because Palestinians, they do not leave their land, even if the government will not give them a permit. If they give them a license, it's good. If not, they will build with license or without license, because yes, there is an Israeli law saying that it's forbidden to build without a license, but there is also the law of the life. And the law of the life say that if I have a child and they are going to get married, and or if I have a big family, and okay, and the land is mine, I have my plot of land, I must build a house to my children's. And then they build, yes, they build a house without license, not because they don't want to pay the fines, it's because the municipality say, no chance, no chance. And it's also curious to understand how this works. As Jeff said, everything it's legal, because the clerk in the municipality will not say, sorry, we refuse to give you a license because you are a Palestinian. They will never say it. They will check the place of the plot of land in a map, and they will say, oh, we're very, very sorry. We really would like to give you a license, but your house is, according to the master plan, in a green zone where it is impossible to build for ecological reasons. And this is legal. This is legal. He make it according to the master plan. You for sure understand that the master plan is not something that comes from God, from Sinai. It's something done by people according to political regulations, by political and that's the way that the municipality works. So then, when the Palestinian, after trying to get a license, has been refused, he started to build a house. Because again, I say it, that's what life said. I cannot say my child, sorry, the municipality refused to build. And then, after he started to build, or in many cases, after he finished to build the house, the inspector come and put a demolition order on the wall. On the wall, he doesn't have to give it to the owner of the house. It's enough to put it in the wall. And since then, 20 hours after, or 24 hours after then, or 24 years after then, the bulldozer can come without any pre-announcement, knocking the door, good morning, we are from the municipality, we are coming to demolish your house, and you have 1 hour or 2 hours to take out your pertinences. And if the family will say, but I never get a demolition order, they can show him the picture of an inspector putting the demolition order on the wall. And when if the family will say, yes, it happens 10 years ago, but 10 years ago we haven't lived here. We are just 3 years living here. The answer will be yes, maybe, but the demolition order is not against you. It's against the house. And that's the reason why we put it on the wall. So it doesn't make any difference who lives in the house 10 years before. And yes, and they will demolish the house without any pre-announcement. And in Jerusalem, 33% of the Palestinian houses are under the threat of being demolished. In Jerusalem, there are more than 30,000 houses with demolition orders. And you can imagine for families that they never know if tomorrow the bulldozer will arrive. So this makes people crazy. And yes, this is not life. And for Israel, everything is legal. And more than once, people working there, they are good guys after in their civil life. Maybe they also are leftist in some way, but everybody here works for the right wingers, and this is why we, the Jeff, me, and others, we are so so weak, and we cannot change the paradigms because everything is illegal. If we cannot go to the court, to the Supreme Court, and ask them to save families, because even the court will say, yes, this is not justice, but is according to the law. And more than once they say, if you try to change the law, and after then we will have tools to save these houses. So maybe it's enough, Omar, and if will be more questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Meir. We have a number of questions, so I will be asking them, and since both of you are experts in the field, you can choose who would answer them. Can we have more information on the refusal of building permits? I mean, the numbers, how many building permits people apply and get refused?
I am not up to date. The average number is about no more than 100 permits over a year that the municipality submit to the citizens. How many permits, how many licenses the people ask for, the number is not very big, because people knows that there is no chance to get licenses, so why to pay so much fines when I know that my neighbor on the right and the other neighbor on the left, they has been refused, me too will be refused. So the municipality, if you ask, the municipality will say 80% of the requesting, they get positive responses. Yes, maybe, but there are hundreds of families that they prefer not to submit, not to ask for, because they know what will be the answer.
In the West Bank, by the way, in the West Bank, according to the figures, B'Tselem and other groups, 99, even more than 99% of the permits are denied by the civil administration in the West Bank. And it's like Meir was saying, it's you know, that it's not that you don't want a permit. I mean, most Palestinians would love to have a permit and do everything legally. You know, they don't have much money and they need a house. They need, you know, your son wants to get married, or, you know, your family's growing, you need a house. They'd love to be able to do it legally. I mean, nobody wants to build illegally. But as Meir said, you know, it's a catch-22, because you, if you apply for a permit, it'll cost you, it depends, Jerusalem is different from the West Bank, but it can cost you up to $20,000 or more you have to pay for the permit itself, but you also have to pay at times for a surveyor. You have to pay all kinds of different fees for different sorts of measurements. You have to pay meter by meter to connect the house to the electrical system, to the water system, to the whole infrastructure. When Israelis build, they build housing projects. Commercial companies get the land, and the government usually brings the infrastructure to the site. And then a contractor builds 1,000 housing units, and whatever it costs, for a permit or for this fee or lawyers or linking up to the infrastructure, you simply build into the cost of each apartment. So it's really nothing in a sense. But if you take that same $20,000 or more for one particular family that has to build by itself, and then they're far away from the infrastructure, the city's not, or the civil administration is not going to bring the infrastructure to them, and you have to pay meter by meter for everything, it becomes absolutely unaffordable for Palestinians. So if you ask for a permit, you have to pay all those fees, and then there's a 99% chance you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it, as Meir says. Actually, it's even more cruel than that, because often the people that do get permits are collaborators. And this is one of the ways in which Israel controls the Palestinian population. You need a house for your family, your son's getting married or whatever. We can arrange it, no problem. This is what we want you to do. So it's a very dirty business. And then at the same time, of course, if you don't apply for a permit, like Meir says, so why would you apply for a permit? You're not going to get it. You don't have that money to spend. And so you don't apply for a permit, and you build on your own land. And then, of course, you're a violator. You're violating the law. And of course, you get demolished. Either way, there is no way that a Palestinian can be a normal, law-abiding, honest, straightforward citizen. There's just no way
Not to mention, Jeff, my family, we got, denied 6 times, and twice we got accepted and the file got lost. That's a different.
Yeah. Or there's bribery. There's also bribery.
Yes.
Where you pay Meir knows this, the Department of Building Inspectors of the Jerusalem municipality, all of them have been arrested twice in the whole department over the years for bribery, because what we'll do is, your family would give the building inspector money, and your application will be put at the bottom of the pile so that they'd never get to it in terms of having to approve it. They just lose it. Losing the file, if you have the building inspector on your side, is a good thing, because then you're off, but losing the file is another way, of course, of also
there's a question that would apply for both of you. Dealing with this on a daily basis, it must be must have major effects on your well-being and on your mental health, dealing with families or communities that get their houses demolished. Beit Arabiya was demolished, 8 times, 9 times, I can't remember.
Our mental health, or the Palestinians'
Yes.
mental health?
No, your mental health. It is as people who are engaged with this.
Right. Meir, what do you say to that?
No, I haven't understand your question, Omar.
How does it affect you personally? To be in contact with all these people whose homes get demolished, or seeing it?
Oh, it's a kind of question that I don't like to make a striptease. It's very hard for me to talk about my feelings. What I can say is that before I am a son of a Holocaust survivor, for me, this is something that's very moving, because in some ways that remind me the situation that the Jewish people were in Europe under the Nazi regime. There is something that I am not a young man, as you can see, but I cannot understand how my state, my people, they can do to the Palestinians what others do to my grandfathers in Poland in the 30s. I cannot, I don't know what to say to my sons, to my grandsons. I shame more than this. I shame it, but I feel impotent. This is the word. This is the word. I feel that we lose this this fight, and I'm waiting for better times when things will change. I believe that in some time the pendulum will come again to the we change the direction. I'm still hoping that this state will came back to the way of the prophets. This is not the Judaism that we dream about. This is not Judaism. What is happening here, this Israelism, this military Israelism is not the humanist Judaism of the prophets that I believe on them.
Dr. Meir, there's a question for you. There's plenty of questions, and we're running out of time. There's a question for you and for Jeff. What do you expect the cases that are in Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan of evictions and home demolitions, will they occur? One. And how much do you evaluate the international pressure, especially from diplomats who sometimes try to intervene to put an end to the evictions or the home demolitions? And the third part of the question is, how much influence do Israeli settler organizations have over the municipality?
Jeff, please.
No, you go. You answer.
It's an easy question.
Concerning the Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan, the answer is everything depends on the new American government. Just the American government can stop these evictions, and I believe I have good reasons to believe that they will stop it. They will not allow the Israelis to expel these families from there. I can, yes, believe that the international pressure helps. International pressure makes the job. Israel do not care about the Israeli opinion, but Israel care about the international opinion. So it's clear that during this Trump and Netanyahu government, Israel feels that they can do everything they want, but now the rules of the game change, and I believe that we will start a new period with better horizons. Inshallah, this is my hope. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm a little less optimistic than Meir in a sense, and that is that what Israel does, of course, is that it does so many violations in so many areas that you can't focus on one particular thing. If house demolitions, that's been our focus, but as soon as you get a campaign of house demolitions, the walls being built, the new settlements being built, some other outrage happens that you have to organize around, and you end up running around trying to put out fires. And also, of course, there's only a certain limit to which people abroad, especially members of Congress or members of parliaments, are going to fight Israel, going to interfere with Israel. So, we've tried to have a campaign against house demolitions itself, saying to politicians, look, it doesn't matter if you support one state or 2 states or 10 states. House demolitions could end without affecting any. You're not affecting anything politically by ending house demolitions. But you can't really separate those sorts of things. And I think we started out ICAHD, and Meir was with us, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, more as an activist organization against house demolitions, what's going on, and so on. But over the years, personally, I've begun to leave activism because I think it's not, if activism isn't connected to a political program, it loses its meaning because, I love Arik Asherman, Rabbi Arik Asherman. But Arik is 24 hours a day out there with the shepherds and with the Bedouins and house demolitions. And he's running all the time, all night, and there's no effect. I mean, you here and there, maybe you can do a little something, but even there on the field, you don't have much effect. We can't, like Meir says, we can't stop house demolitions. Even if we can resist the demolition, but they can demolish it anyway. We have no. So what I'm involved with is the one democratic state campaign to say that if the 2-state solution is gone, I know Meir and I don't agree with this politically, but in my view is the 2-state solution is gone. And unless we have a compelling political program, our activism is meaningless. We're just running around. So that I think the only way out of this is, the only way to end settler colonialism is decolonization. Creating one state here of one democratic state of equal rights for everyone. And then you've got the BDS movement, and you have house demolitions, and you have Arik's work and work of rabbis and all kinds of other groups, and Meir's work within a political framework. It's linked to in other words, the activism is linked to a political end game. Because every time you go to parliaments and you say, we're against the occupation, or we want peace, or whatever it is, whatever our issue is, their question is, well, what do you want? What's your vision? What do you want? And if we don't have an answer, if we just say end the occupation in a general way, and we can't really argue for the 2-state solution anymore, unless we have an answer to that, they'll throw us out of their offices. So we have to have there has to be a connection between the activism and a political program, and that's still missing today. So we're trying to build that, especially among Palestinians, the idea of one democratic state. We have a 10-point program, and and then hopefully within that wider, it's like a root canal. Within that, resolving the wider political issue, you resolve the thousands of other issues like house demolitions that are on the way. That's become my approach, at least.
We have over 30 questions that we're not going to be able to address because of the time limitations. So I need to apologize. We will definitely do a better job in the coming weeks with the time, or we will try our best to do something with the time. We will try. We will be sending you out an email with more information to everybody who has been part of this Kumi session. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you very much, Dr. Meir. We appreciate everything that you're doing. I hope if you could share it again, Ryan, on the chat, the event of the launching of the book with Jeff. I think it's something, it wasn't easy for me to register, but I was trying to do it while moderating this meeting. Maybe it needs, we'll look into it again. Hopefully it will be easier, not as difficult as I have understood. Thank you all. And if for the people who are following the Kumi actions, is that we focus on the 10th of Nations, a place that is dear and important to many of the people who have visited the Holy Land. So the best way to support the work of 10th of Nations is to visit the farm yourself, or encourage friends, school groups, and church groups who are making or planning to be coming this year or hopefully next year to the Holy Land, is to stop at the 10th of Nations and visit it. If you're not able to visit because of COVID, what you can do is you can support their Plant a Tree program. Donate or encourage people to donate for planting a tree. 10th of Nations will send you a certificate for your tree, but you won't receive it in time to share it online this week. Instead, what we encourage you is to get creative and think to the future, as Dawood suggests when he says, when you plant a tree, you believe that this tree is going to bear fruit. Maybe not tomorrow, but in 10, 15 years. Draw a picture of your tree finally bearing fruit and share it on social media, along with a message such as, I sponsored the tree at the 10th of Nations, and to support their fourth way of action. Include the link above or mentioned in the chat with the link to this page of Kumi Now website and hashtag. The information is in the chat and will be sent to you by email if it hasn't already been done. I don't want, so thank you very much, Jeff and Dr. Meir, and I know that we will be having you with us again in coming sessions.
Okay, thank you for having us.
Enjoys their evening.
Bye all.